From Kilimani rap to humongous malls to lavish cafes, Nairobi is a colonial, industrialized, wet dream. Very little is African about Nairobi itself. In any post colonial country, the people and the population are all kind of a version of the colonial powers. Every part of the country is fighting colonialism, and basically, African culture is lost. Now, to understand Nairobi, you have to understand colonization, and you have to understand the standard that Nairobians have for themselves. You have to understand what it means to be cool for Gen Z, and for the older generations, you must understand what it means to be successful. Chapter 1: The effects of colonialism. Pre-colonially, kulikuwa na tribes na communities wenye walikuwa naishi Nairobi. And then they got pushed away to make room for the European estates. Before the railway actually reached Nairobi in 1899, it was chosen as a railway town by the British because of its topography. They only considered the European railway workers and the European and Asian traders in the area. From the beginning, the planning of Nairobi was supposed to segregate Asians and Africans from the Europeans, with inflation of land prices in the Asian and African residencies. Quote ETH Zurich, a major aspect was the inflated land price in the Asian and African residential areas, also a result of the prohibition of the racial segregation between Europeans and Asians. In 1923, the racial segregation turned into class segregation, which was in complete agreement with the interests of the settler class. 90% of the territory belonged to Europeans, 10% to Asians, and for male Africans, the only legal way to live in the city was in the squatter settlements. Important to note is that only African men were allowed to be in Nairobi for a temporary time for work. Nairobi was meant to be for the Europeans. So Africans walikuwa naishi flood-prone sides za Eastlands, Ngara, Parklands, together with Asians. Europeans would live in Karen, Muthaiga, Upper Parklands, Westlands, Loresho, Kileleshwa, and Kilimani. More people started coming in from the rural areas as time goes by. Kenya was changing. After independence, we did that. There's a mass migration from the rural to Nairobi, as Nairobi was the more industrialized area. And that's how Kibera came to be. But, Kibera deserves its own video. Now we have to set the scene. Now we have set the scene. Kila mtu ako kwao. We understand where the Africans are, where the Europeans are, where the Asians are. Number 2, we must also understand how Kenya got independence to understand the effects of colonialism. Kenya decided to conform to European standards. It was the strategy to gain freedom. English was learned. We practiced Christianity. We wore their clothes. We proved our humanity to the oppressor by becoming like the oppressor. This is important to note because it is the reason that many Westerners feel comfortable in Nairobi. We are a substitute Europe, and because of the Americanization of the world, we are a substitute America. We all speak English, and we have European-style restaurants and hotels. Westerners know where to go, so they do not have to integrate into Kenyan culture. Chapter 3, Class Mobility and Internalized Colonialism. So as industrialization is continuing, more African indulging in this industrialization peak are getting more educated. These are then our parents. They're moving upward in class. They get jobs. They move to better neighborhoods, the white neighborhoods. These neighborhoods are European. Our parents had to conform to whiteness to be deemed as successful. They were just village boys and girls, wametoka ushago, and then they had to fend for their family. They had to create a name for themselves in a newly industrialized Nairobi. And the landscape of corporate Kenya at the time is European. So they had to internalize that proximity to whiteness is success. Straightening your hair, talking English, wearing suits and dresses. They were just figuring stuff out. They now make up a huge chunk of the middle class. These are people that live in Kilimani, Kileleshwa, Donholm, Rongai even. Then they kind of gave us the same mentality as Gen Z, but I'm dealing with us later. Chapter 3, the term kienyeji and internalized colonialism. After the golden age of being able to move up in class, this is right after independence and how people were just able to get jobs because it's new. Industrialization is new. If you go into uni, you get a degree, you're probably going to get a job because a European firm is going to hire you, or people are looking for, less expensive workers, and you have a degree, you're qualified. It was easy to move up in class right after we got independence as industrialization was really starting to kick. So after this golden age, people are still coming to Nairobi because Nairobi is the land of dreams. Where else is industrialized? Basically nowhere. They're feeling Kibera, Dagoretti, Thika Road, Rongai even, our intersectional queen, just everywhere. Kawangware. People keep migrating from the countryside, more and more people, and we know this is a phenomenon. Watu wanatoka Ushago, wanakuja Nairobi, wanaibiwa, mambo kama hayo. And they come here and they have to meet the rigid European standards because Nairobi, remember Nairobi, the proximity to whiteness means you're successful. And not saying that colonization didn't affect the whole country, just that Nairobi in your headquarters. So they come to Nairobi, the golden age is over. You can't join corporate Kenya anymore easily. They can't move into formerly European residences. You stay, you create slums, you create informal housing. Something isn't right though. Their proximity to whiteness is limited. Mambo za countryside na za Nairobi zinakutana, wanakuwa kienyeji. And this culture is in tandem na watu wa Ushago, since their family and social circles reside back home. Like you go back home for Christmas, unarudi. So it's basically just you're juggling between a European standard and one of countryside, you know? This is now the majority of the working class. But no, we don't find them cool. We don't find them cool enough. Who is we? Chapter 4. Gen Z middle class and Afrophobia. We as the kids of the middle class, we're in such proximity to whiteness. Now, westernization and Americanization, because the whole world is connected with the influence flowing in from the West, mostly America. Our parents already made themselves acceptable and they passed it down to us. Now we love baggy jeans and Frank Ocean, art exhibitions. African culture is so foreign to us. We think we'd be more at home in New York or Berlin. February 1926, Colonial officer Eric Dutton passed through Nairobi on his way to Mount Kenya and said of the city, "Maybe one day, Nairobi will be laid out with tarred roads, with avenues of flowering trees, flanked by noble buildings, with open spaces and stately squares, a cathedral worthy of faith and country, museums and of art, theaters and public offices." And it is fair to say that the government and the municipality have already bravely tackled the problem, and that a town plan ambitious enough to turn Nairobi into a thing of beauty has been slowly worked out. And much has already been done, but until that plan has borne fruit, Nairobi must remain what she was then, a slatternly creature unfit to queen it over so lovely a country. And that is exactly the kind of Nairobi that the middle class lives in. We live in a colonial officer's dream. This is what he wanted for Nairobi. Colonizers, that's what they wanted. Sorry. And we hate being kienyeji because it's a state of not understanding westernization. It's not understanding the proximity to whiteness. We are Afrophobic at our core. It is cool to be from the West rather than Kisii or Kakamega. We are classist at our worst. We hate matatus and can't listen to dancehall at our parties. We spend hours going to art events and book clubs and lavish clubs. We are substitute Europeans and Americans. It is filtered into how we speak, the lack of Kiswahili in our daily lives, the ridicule of anything kienyeji, our KFCs and our iPhones, tukienda shags ndio watu wa Nairobi. Even the books we read, the music we listen to is only good if it reminds you of a Western author, if it reminds you of a Western musician. Nairobi is full of Africans with no Africanness. Both middle and working class Nairobians are fighting internalized and neo-colonialism. The middle class, being the ones to spearhead decolonization, is usually the case. Since they have the money, the working class is too busy working. But we ourselves are already so colonized, I wonder if decolonization is even possible now. Thanks for watching my first video. I will be posting longer podcast form videos too, don't worry. I'm excited to see what this chapter brings. Hopefully you'll stay with me as I explore Africa and as I explore Nairobi and Kenya critically. Goodbye and thank you.